It's my pleasure to welcome you to the high-level Conference on Justice for Children organized by the European Union and the United Nations Children's Funds or UNICEF. It is part of our continued support to neighboring and enlargement countries in establishing and reforming their juvenile justice systems. And it is also a reflection of the fact that we care for our children, in fact for all the children, for taking stock of the current state of play and what needs to be done in the future. Let me underline my strong commitment to implementing the European Union policy on the promotion and protection of children's rights. This calls for a reinforced cooperation with national authorities and civil society so that we can ensure that children are treated as fully fledged members of society. There are still many challenges regarding the rights of the child and juvenile justice within the EU. In fact, the EU itself has adopted several pieces of legislation relevant to children in justice in recent years. For example, the Directive on Sexual Abuse and Exploitation, the Anti-Trafficking Directive, and we intend to propose a new measure on suspect defendants. The participation of enlargement countries in the reference is very relevant because the topic of today's conference is a priority area for the EU in the accession process. Indeed, the EU accused on children's rights and child protection is not limited to Chapter 23, Judiciary and Fundamental Rights. No less than 17 other accused chapters contain legal instruments that have important provision on children's rights and protection. Despite some progress, there is still scope for considerable improvement when it comes to children's rights. I am thinking in particular about the need to overcome institutionalization of children to promote preventive mechanism in support of families. And our concern don't just end there. Let me mention 6 other important areas that need to be addressed. Number 1, lack of specific measures for child victims leading to unnecessary trauma and victimization. This is why it is also important that neighboring and enlargement countries not only adhere to international human rights standards, but they must also ensure the effective implementation of recently adopted criminal justice legislation, which in some countries is very progressive. So for justice reform is one of the core pillars of the European Union external action. It aims at ensuring judicial independence, impartiality, and integrity, increasing the performance, efficiency, accountability, and transparency of the justice sector, improving access to justice for the poorest and the most vulnerable, and improving detention conditions and introducing alternatives to imprisonment. Successful justice reform initiatives are those built on national priorities, enjoying full political commitment and national ownership, as well as reinforce partnerships between civil society and state decision makers. I would like to remind you about the ongoing support that the European Commission is providing in the neighborhood and enlargement countries. In the neighborhood countries, the Commission is supporting juvenile justice reform within the rule of law agenda in Ukraine, Georgia, Moldova, Azerbaijan, and Armenia through financial and technical assistance provided by the European Neighborhood and Partnership Instrument. In the enlargement countries, the Commission has been providing support through the Instrument for Pre-Accession Assistance to strengthen protection measures in general and to support assistance for child victims and juvenile justice system in particular. Former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia and support for civil society working in the area of child protection has also been provided. Enlargement countries are gradually aligning their legislation with the EU accused. The Commission is monitoring this process intensively, including when it comes to the rights of the child. In the different chapter on this point, I would like to underline the data collection is an important part of the monitoring work. The European Commission supports enlargement and neighborhood countries to strengthen their statistical capacity so that reliable data is available to support modern policy making. We remain committed to supporting projects and policies that enhance child protection system and strengthen the rights of children, including as victims or in the context of criminal proceedings. Recognition that juvenile justice reform is a key entry point for the promotion and protection of children's rights. EU support to date and advancing the juvenile justice reform agenda has focused on two areas. First, law reform for the promotion and protection of children's rights, in particular by encouraging and supporting the enactment and review of national legislation to ensure its compatibility with relevant international standards on the rights of the child, in particular the Convention on the Rights of the Child, and enhancing the capacity of law enforcement agency for investigation into the violation of children's rights and the development of child-friendly procedures in pre-trial and court proceedings. Second, combating and discouraging violations of children's rights, in particular by prohibiting violation of the children's rights and ill treatment of children law, including criminal law, and ending impunity for violation of children's rights and taking effective legislative, administrative, judicial, and other measures to prevent violation of children's rights under the jurisdiction of the state and combat immunity for such violation. We do not work alone. UNICEF is one of our traditional partners whose vital work in the field is advancing the children's rights agenda in line with international standards and best practices. I am particularly proud of the cooperation that we have established with UNICEF to face the consequences of the Syrian crisis. When I was in Jordan recently, I went to the Zaatari refugees camp and inaugurated a school run by UNICEF and funded by the European Commission. Through this concerted cooperation, we are giving children living in camps a semblance of normal life and the opportunity of pure knowledge for rebuilding their lives. Through innovative approaches, research, know-how, and constant involvement, UNICEF has greatly contributed in advising countries on how to reform their juvenile justice system based on modern legislation, policy, and operation. Today, we have the opportunity to discuss our achievements, but also what remains to be done and how so that children can enjoy their rights and freedoms in states and properly